Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Tavern. I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to July. If you're anywhere near my area of the woods, hopefully you've seen some sun at some point this summer, because I know I've seen hardly any. But we've got a great group of people here, and just a minute we're going to go around and give everybody a chance to introduce themselves, tell you all a little about who they are and what they do and where you can find them around the internet, because who knows how long we'll all still be on Twitter. So that'll be fun. So we're going to dive in. We'll do those introductions, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how this stream works if you haven't had a chance to join us for this in the past. If you have, I already see some of your questions coming up in chat, so that'll be great. We will dive in with those in just a second. So let's get started with some introductions. We're going to go around in the order that people appear on the stream. So Jason, we're going to start with you. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Jason Cordova. I am the founder of the Gauntlet Gaming Community. I am a podcaster and a publisher in the indie RPG and story game space. I'm probably most well known for a podcast that I co-host called Fear of a Black Dragon, which is about adventure modules, and also as the creator of Brindlewood Bay, which is a game about elderly women who solve murder mysteries in their cozy New England town. And they also fight Lovecraftian horrors at the end as well. So, and also a few other games derived from Brindlewood Bay as well.
I love it. I really need to play that game, especially because I'm from New England. So
yeah, you definitely should.
And Murder, She Wrote, and all that stuff, right up my alley.
So. We like to call it Cthulhu, She Wrote. So,
yes, yeah. I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'm excited to have you. Ketup, our emotional support Canadian.
Oh gosh, buddy. Okay, here, let's go. I do a bunch of things. I guess primarily, I've got a YouTube channel. I do some videos there on a few different systems, mostly Cypher, but a few different things. Do live streams, run a lot of one-shots for people like Bob World Builder, Nerd Immersion, Indestructible Boy, Tree Monk, a bunch of other creatives. We all like to pal around and stuff. But aside from the video things, I'm also doing the Cypher conversion for Mr. Trask's Adventure Isle of the Dreaded Accursed right now. And I've got my own system coming out that's in testing phase right now that's meant for all ages, because I think needs to be more RPGs for kids to enjoy with their parents and stuff. And it's going to be super light, super easy to get into. That's called Dungeon Slug.
Oh my gosh.
I've got a bunch of things on the back burner, but way too many to talk about here. So yeah, that's good.
I would just like to point out Mimics and Misfits wishes you a happy belated Canada Day.
Oh, thanks.
Well, Ketup, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I am always excited to get a chance to chat with you. So, Rosie, let's go to you next.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Rosie, Sweet Rosie B, just about everywhere on the internet. I am a TTRPG performer, professional GM, showrunner, and crafter. I wear a lot of hats. Upcoming this month, I am the storyteller for a Lord of the Rings The One Ring Rivendell Oops All Elves adventure that should be releasing later this week. And I am working on a Space Pirates adventure that will be releasing in August, but updates will be available throughout this month. And I'm so excited.
That's awesome. That I know you do a lot, and I'm excited that we had time to get you on. For anybody who hasn't watched the video, Rosie was at PAX East with me this year, so if you missed the video of that, it's posted on YouTube. Definitely check it out. We had a really good time and had some very, very entertaining questions and even better conversation. Let's see. Shawn B, we're going to go to you first.
I'm that one.
That's you.
Hello, humans. I'm Shawn Banerjee. What do I do? I'm a founder of The Word Refinery. We're a small indie publisher in the RPG space. We just finished up our first Kickstarter for Cordova, which is a South American setting for 5e Pathfinder and Cobalt Press's core fantasy role-playing. Mm-hmm. So late pledge stores open over on Backagit. But that's as much shilling as I'll do. Other than that, you can find me most places at Shawn Banerjee. including the new places and the old places.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on tonight. And Shawn M., tell us a little about you.
I have been a freelance game designer for the last 20 years or so, mostly part-time. Recently, I've been able to go full-time for Ghostfire Gaming as its lead designer. I've also got 2 podcasts that are going on right now. One is called Mastering Dungeons, which I do with Teos Abadia, and the other is the Eldritch Lorecast. And I also teach a class once a year on writing for role-playing games, which is a great way to sort of give back to the gaming community and create the game designers of tomorrow.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Thank you also for coming on tonight. I always love getting to meet new people and have new people come on and chat. So this is great because it's all new people to the stream. So I am Gamer Mom Luna. If you have not watched this stream before, let me tell you a little about how it works. The way that we do this is all of the questions that we answer come from you in chat. So without you guys, this is going to be a real boring stream. So please feel free to drop your questions into chat, and we will make sure that we get a chance. We will try our best to get to all of them. Excuse me, and we will. Answer them in the order that they come in. However, we do have a channel point redemption if you've been around for a little while for Ask My Question Next, which will bump your question up to the next one in the queue. So if you have a question and you don't think that we're going to have time to squeeze it in, feel free to use that. My cats would also very much like to remind you that there is a channel point redemption for treats for kitties. So just throwing that one out there. They would like you to know that. I think that's it. Later in the stream, I'm going to talk a little more about next week's Extra Life charity event coming up, and we'll talk more about that because we've got a whole weekend of TTRPG stuff coming up, so that'll be awesome. But let's dive in with some of the questions that we've already seen come in from chat. So I'm gonna jump right in with the first one that I saw come in from chat. Usually I do like a warm-up question, but chat was really on the ball tonight. So the first question that we have came in from Jim the Dim, and Jim would like to know, is there a certain quirk or flaw that you put into your characters or NPCs? And feel free, there's no like order that you have to go into answer. Feel free to just jump in and answer at any point.
My characters in almost any game I play, I try to have a very short attention span for the character, because that means the character's instigating, and that means it's giving everyone else a chance to play off that, whether it's the game master who's saying, oh, there's 6 levers, and before he can finish, I have all the levers pulled. Because the levers are there for fun, so let's pull those levers. That's my go-to quirk for as a player.
I love that.
I don't know if it's a quirk, but for a long time, I've followed this GM prep technique of my own device, where one of the aspects of it is I make sure that every character has one way that I can embody it at the table, whether that be like some kind of quirk or a physical tick or a way I move my body when I speak as them, or just something like that, right? So I don't usually do accents, but that is another thing that I suppose you can do as well. So, which is just to say that that's all you need to make an NPC come to life at the table. It's just one little thing that kind of makes them stand apart from the other NPCs.
I don't know. I make them all so drastically different. I guess the quirk for me is the fact that I'm always like, all right, I did this in the last one, so the next one's got to be not that. So my quirk says it always has to be different, maybe. That's the closest I got.
It's not so much... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, all of my characters that I play have heterochromia, because I do.
Oh.
Which is literally a quirk of genetics, I guess. It's not,
yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't ever come up. It's just a thing every time.
It's not something that I do all the time, but at one time I played a character who used a lot of malapropisms, and that was hilarious. Like, I had to keep a list of malapropisms because I like otherwise I'd have to stop and really think about it. But it was hilarious. I would screw up words you need to be more Pacific when you talk about things. And then I would screw up like, statements. I would be like, you could lead your horse to water, but you can't make him lie in it. So that was fun.
I think for me, I tend to, for lack of a better term, make charisma my dump stat. No matter what system I'm playing in, I want characters that are maybe a little bit naive, even if they're very smart, but just have them either take things way too literally or not think before they speak or just babble on and on without realizing that that's what they're doing. And I find that to be very fun because it creates openings for other players to be like, oh no, I actually meant this. It gives players room to explain or give better exposition or to sort of see things from a more childlike perspective, which I always think is very fun in more serious games.
Let's see. Trying to think if there was any other things that I had for characters, but I can't think of anything. So let's see what the next question is that we have. Well, I'm gonna throw this out there because it came up in the green room, and Matt says he and his wife have a poll going about it. So let's pretend you're eating tacos at the TTRPG table, and do you let the taco meat melt your cheese, or do you microwave it to force it to melt?
There's only one right answer.
There's only one right answer here.
Yes.
Yeah, you're wrong otherwise. You're just wrong.
I'll be wrong. I want my cheese melty. Let's go. I do. Is this a homemade taco? It doesn't matter. If the cheese isn't melty enough for my taste, it's gonna go in the microwave for 30 seconds. It's
I don't
happening.
like you anymore.
I might
I'm
take
offering
the
a third option.
Maybe it's just the way we do tacos in Texas, but like there's no expectation that the cheese is going to be melted on your taco. Like it's shredded and or it's crumbled. Like if it's cotija, like there's no.
If it's tortilla, then that's not like a cheese that I would expect to be melted either.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm not imagining like a very traditional taco.
But I would never.
If you use Limburger on your taco, then it just comes pre-melted.
Pre-melted.
and then you're fine. You don't have to wait.
I only use freshly scraped raclette, giant half wheel that I keep right off screen.
It's a French taco. I put brie on mine.
No, you take all the tacos, you put them in the ovens, then the cheese gets crispy on top too.
There you go.
I'll accept oven.
But not microwave.
I mean, I'm pretty bad at things.
For me, it's a texture thing. I could never just on texture alone. It's not a matter of principle. It is. I can't do the texture.
All right. So moving back on to TTRPG related questions, Chaotic Blade 5 would like to know, and if you don't have one, that's okay. What is your favorite playbook from any Powered by the Apocalypse system?
I know that was directed at me because I know that Chaotic's in my community. So
yes.
I was like, guys, I need some ringers in this chat. So you all need to come to the chat.
Yeah.
So what was the question though? Playbook?
What is your favorite playbook from any PBTA system?
Mine's a little probably going to be not super exciting, but I actually really love just the fighter in Dungeon World. The fighter is such a good playbook. It's so to me it kind of like does a really good job of recapturing like what the original like old school fighter or fighting man class was, but like in this more narrative way that PBTA does. But since Shawn M held up Monster of the Week, I also quite like the Wronged from Monster of the Week.
That's a good one, yeah.
And I love the vampire in Monster Hearts because I love anytime I can be very sexy in a game. And yeah, those are just off the top of my head, I guess. I'm curious what other people think.
I'm like loading my Saturday Powered by the Apocalypse game right now. I'm like, what am I even playing?
I know. I'm sitting here and I'm going, what was I playing when I did my Blades in the Dark game? I
mean, I suppose I could say that like my personal personal, closest to me favorite playbook in a PBTA game is the Murder Maven from Brindlewood Bay, but it's just the one. There's no like other choices. You could only be a Murder Maven, so that's kind of a cop out. Also, it's my game, but yeah.
Are we not allowed to reference things we've worked on? I'll put this book away. So.
Well, by all means, reference things you've
Absolutely
worked
sure.
on.
I don't even know if this has. Oh yeah, good. It does. I'll go with the real thing, the Faith No More RPG. And honestly, I'm a fan of the Hedonist from this, specifically because it works so well. So, for those of you that are young like I am and don't know what 90s punk is, the Faith No More role-playing game takes place in a very like SLC punk, 90s punk world, and the Hedonist just plays really well into that, and I'm a fan. Why not? Not for the light of heart though. Parental advisory.
If you have never played a Powered by Apocalypse game, but you're into say D&D, definitely get Dungeon World just to see how a different game can take on that fantasy genre and do it really well, and do it in a way that you may like even better than a D20 system. The students that I teach mostly come in only knowing D&D, so when I throw Dungeon World up and say, hey, let's look at how we can do this differently, their minds are blown. And it's one of the best parts of that class is starting to see the lights go on with players who only know one system. So,
I haven't played it in years, but Dungeon World is what I made my career and reputation off of in the hobby, right? I mean, I'm a full-time role-playing game person because of Dungeon World, essentially, and like because that's how we built the Gauntlet. Well, that was the game that we principally played, and yeah, like Dungeon World's kind of fallen out of favor in recent years because of all the stuff with Adam and like other things, and also just because it's been around for a long time. But like, but it's a really like. I can't tell you like how many times I ran it for people who were like, this feels like what I think D&D thinks it is, or you know, like they would have that kind of feeling, like Stranger Things presents this certain idea of D&D, but that's kind of like not what D&D is when we sit down and play. But Dungeon World kind of is that, and so I think that's what appeals to a lot of people about it. But yeah, that's been my experience anyway.
I think for me, I've played some Dungeon World. I played more Apocalypse World, and I forget the exact name of the playbook, but the one where you're like the creepy little child that like has like all the like the weird mumbo jumbo mystical powers.
Oh yeah.
That's fun to do.
I've only played one Powered by the Apocalypse system. It's called Good Strong Hands. It takes place in like a fantasy like anthropomorphic animals sort of world, very dark, very like impending void sort of BBEG. My favorite playbook from that is Wildkin, which is you are an animal creature and you have animal power. So like if you're a rabbit or a deer, you can jump real high. But then you have corruptions where you become feral and you become possessed. And it is just such an interesting playbook to work through as you sort of weigh those options of, is now the time to sort of embrace that void, that darkness, and save my friends, or give in and power through. It was
Rosie,
very
what was
fun.
the name of that game again? What was it
Good
called?
Strong Hands.
Good Strong Hands. Oh, okay, cool.
Yes.
I've never heard of that one.
That's awesome.
Very fun.
All I think of when I hear that is the rock biter from yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Never
The
Ending
rock
Story.
biter.
There is
Yeah,
a
the
rock
Never Ending
fighter type
Story.
playbook in that game. I forget what I think they're called Stonekin, but yeah, we had a player in the game that based his entire character off the rock fighters.
Yeah.
I'm actually in. This is. I can say I'm actually in discussions with the estate of the author of Never Ending Story to license it and turn into a role-playing game.
If you
I don't know if it's gonna happen.
need any
I don't know if it's gonna happen.
playtesters.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I've always. It would be the book, not the movie, but like, so it's not exactly what people like know as the Never Ending Story, at least in America. But I would love it if we got that license because I have like such a good idea for it, like gameplay wise.
That would be really cool.
It would be really rad. Yeah. So.
I had Andrew Kolb was here last month, and he did Oz and he did Neverland, which like those are both based on the books, not like the movie The Wizard of Oz and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it actually, because me and a few other people are looking at using the Oz setting in Cypher, so I'm excited to play that. But yeah, that sounds like it would be really fun. So yeah, like I said, if you need playtesters, just say it.
We're volunteering this whole group.
All of us, yeah.
The book is so good though. Like if like almost everybody I know will just know the movie of the Neverending Story, but like the book is like really really good. Like
Yeah.
It's really like, I don't know, like it's a German book, so it has like a different perspective and a different point of view of like fantasy, you know, and it's nice.
It had that twist where it ended.
I had a character that I played one time who learned how to become a dragon rider, and this was like long before I ever started streaming games, you know, at a home game. And so every time she would get on her dragon, I would pull up the song from Neverending Story, and my character would get on her dragon and she'd go, yeah.
It's like all I wanted as a little boy. Like it's all I wanted. Like
Right.
I was like, why don't I have a luck
Why
dragon?
don't I
Like,
have a luck dragon?
Yeah, I know, like it's like all I wanted. Like I was the same age as Bastion, like when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, oh man, like I wish this was real.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday about like how many movies wouldn't exist if cell phones were a thing when they were made. Like Goonies never would have happened today, like, because cell phones are a thing, and Home Alone never would have happened, you know. But then we were talking about the Neverending Story, and we were like, well, he didn't have a great relationship with his dad, so maybe he wouldn't have called his dad to say I'm trapped in the school. And so we were like, maybe that one still could have happened. All right, let's see. So we got a question from More Waffles, Please. And the question is, what is your favorite way to structure a campaign for TTRPGs that don't provide one for GMs to follow? That's a big question.
It's a great question. All my games do. So but I think, you know, honestly, I'm going to get a little nerdy here and I apologize. But I'm a big believer in, so there's a English Lovecraftian game writer, Graham Walmsley, who's written for Gumshoe and Trail of Cthulhu and other things. And Graham wrote this book called Stealing Cthulhu. And in Stealing Cthulhu, he like basically says that like the classic Lovecraftian story has like certain story beats, right? Like you, like at this part of the story, you're going to encounter it's this way, and then it gets a little darker, and then it goes underground, and then finally you get to the monster, and everybody goes insane or dies or whatever, right? And I've used that kind of idea of like cinematic or literary narrative beats to like structure the campaigns in my own games, right? So like in Brindlewood Bay, there's a really definite like it's a layered campaign structure. So you gradually unlock each layer of the campaign, and new things happen in the campaign whenever you unlock the layer. And so what I think it's a really like transferable way of doing it. Like you can just have in your mind like, okay, I want there to be like 5 big narrative things that happen, you know, 5 big moments, right? Like escalating to the confrontation with the big bad, right? And so however I cause those things to trigger, I'm going to say that there's, you know, 5 like distinct layers of the campaign. And I think that's how I would do it. I would really structure it around this like sort of literary or cinematic like kind of narrative arcs. Like I think there's a way you can like do that in a role-playing game. And that's how I would do it. I would go for that feeling as opposed to like thinking of like plot points or like characters. I would go for like themes and narrative, punchy narrative moments. Yeah.
I can kind of build on that because I've got a series of YouTube videos of using on my YouTube channel, plug again, of using classic writing techniques. So like the monomyth structure or classic hero's journey or 4-corner opposition or things like that to help give you like a fairly good structure to your campaign. And then I ignore half of it and just improv anyways because I'm bad at stuff. But yeah, no, I like I'll write like point forms, be like, hey, this is cool, let's do this. And I write all these things about how I want to structure my campaign, but I just pull most of it out of my ass and just kind of yes and the vast majority of it, to be honest.
Ooh, jumping off of that. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Jumping off of that, I, as a GM for years and years and years, have never actually run a published campaign. I find so much joy in homebrewing because your players are going to give you ideas. Your players are going to let you know how they want to feel. And if you can start building off of that, if you have a main idea in mind and then see which way your players are intuitively pushing, you can write so much around that to give them the experience that they want. Because you as a GM are also a player, but you want to make sure at the end of the day, it's a game. It's supposed to be fun, so you can have horror elements, you can have big feelings, you can have uncomfortable situations, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to be safe, it's supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to be telling a story together. So going in with this is the end all be all of this campaign really is constricting. It's fine to have big plot points, it's fine to have narrative points and feelings that you want to hit throughout, but I love keeping things open-ended because it gives you and your players so much more freedom.
And the players will use that freedom because you might try to create some very tight campaign where A plugs into B, plugs into C, and it all comes around, and then your players from week to week, from month to month, whatever your campaign runs at, may forget what their character's name is, much less what the barkeep's name is, much less what the dragon's name is. So having that flexibility, it's good to have a plan. It's also good to be able to be flexible when things go way off the rails for whatever reason.
I should say not ever. I rarely GM. So I cannot feed into this question at all.
I don't know that I have anything. I think that if the game itself doesn't provide a structure for GMs to follow, then yeah, I would derive one from the story. Sometimes I do structure things ahead of time, usually in collaboration with the people that I'm playing with, to kind of like build out the big bones of the story. But I mean, if it's meant to be a game with very loose structure, then let's do that. Let's improv. Let's let the players kind of decide where the story goes, because they're going to anyway. It doesn't matter how much prep I do; they're gonna be in charge of the story. It's
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's like writing a book without knowing what your main characters are gonna do, right?
Yeah, the answer to the question depends a lot on like the game you're playing, right? Like like in my game in Brindlewood Bay, you are absolutely at the end of it going to face off against a cosmic horror cult, right? Like that is absolutely going to happen. There's no other end state of the game, right? But that doesn't mean that but it's not constricting in the sense that within that structure of like, yes, there's definitely going to be murder mysteries. There's definitely going to be a confrontation with the cult. You're definitely going to fight the cult at the end. Like within that, there's lots of space to like do collaborative storytelling, right? But because the game is structured that way, like the mysteries, for example, do not have canonical solutions. That's something that you collaborate on at the table, right? And there's other things as well. So like, I think it depends a lot on the game. And also Brindlewood Bay has a definite endpoint, right? Like it's only about 15 sessions. It doesn't go forever. But if it was like Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, that's like totally different thing, right? Like if I'm playing D&D, which by the way, I have not done since second edition. But if I'm playing D&D, if I'm running D&D, it's definitely the expectation is like this story can go in lots of different places, and so you have to keep a certain like nimbleness and stuff, and we could be playing for 50 sessions for all I know, right? But that said, I don't think there's anything wrong with like trying to create like a certain bit of coherency, right? Like you can do it in ways that don't have to involve plot. Like you can use theme, for example. Like I have a theme, and so our theme for this campaign or this session or the adventure or whatever is going to be, darkness or heartbreak or whatever, right? And so there's ways you can like create like a coherent feel so that you get like at the end an HBO level story, right? And not. And it's still being like it's still having that collaborative feel and that like nimbleness. But I think it depends a lot on the game.
I got a whole thing I did on modular story beats, because like I'm like Rosie there. I suck at pre-written adventures, because I go so off book or forget what's in the book that honestly they're worthless to me. I'm just bad at it. But modular story beats, like, see, even if you're in something more structured like D&D or Pathfinder or something like that these days, sure, maybe you've got a story beat like goblin encounter village thing that you want them to do. It doesn't matter if it's tomorrow in the woods or a month from now in the mountains. The players don't have to know that you move it around or stuff like that. Have a couple of story beats, and then the middle of it, you don't have to fill it out. You don't need to have the middle steps between these story beats figured out.
Yeah, I was going to add something onto that, but I think you pretty much said what I was going to say. So,
Oh.
Oh yeah, Jason was throwing a few things into chat too, just about he said, I usually follow the process, but like with kids on bikes, kids on brooms, but he's also bent the hell out of game systems if he thought it worked for that table. So yeah, and then I think too somebody else also mentioned in chat that those books have a great system for world building while you're running the system, which I haven't played either of them, but I've looked at the books for both of them, and they really do. It's really kind of cool. So yeah.
I only did Kids on Brooms, and I went so far off the normal theme because it's supposed to be this like Harry Potter-esque thing, and I'm like, no, like Korean high school and a zombie apocalypse happens. Let's go.
Yeah.
I absolutely love taking systems and then just applying them to a thing they never, like the creator probably never thought about. Coming up in August on Amateurish Productions, I'll be running a heist game using Good Society.
Nice.
Which my central premise is that like heist movies aren't really about can they complete the task, because they're always like the best safecracker in the world. It's about the interconnected like society of high-end thieves and whether or not they can stand each other long enough to complete the task. So rather than rolling for I don't know, picking locks, we're just gonna do high society the whole time. But I'm gonna have to, like, I don't know what the epistolary phase is gonna look like. We're gonna tear it apart, figure something else out with it.
All right. So let's see. The next question that we have is, what would be your TTRPG pitch for the last movie you watched?
Mine's easy. I just watched Lord of the Rings this morning. So it would be the One Ring. Or the D&D compendium, both from Free League. It's a system I enjoy. It's a system I love. If I were to run like a specific sort of story with it, I would love to explore like the Second Age. Because so much of the One Ring and so much of the media out there is the Third Age. The stuff that we're familiar with, The Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings. I would love to explore some of like what happened before, but not at the very beginning. What happened between here's the world and oh no, everything's awful.
I did a Second Age campaign actually. I called it Years of the Sun.
I'm so excited. I love that.
I might as well go in since I interrupted already anyways. The last movie I watched, I did for some reason late last night. I wanted something on in the background, so I did a rewatch of Event Horizon.
Oh.
So I guess I mean Cypher System's my go-to for a lot of stuff because we're asking what system, right? Either that or slightly retool the Alien RPG because I also really like the way that kind of sets things up. They'd probably be pretty good ones. Or Fate.
Okay, so you're a fast-talking investigative reporter who is constantly getting into trouble, but using wit and ingenuity to talk your way out of these problems that you always find yourself in. Probably with the gumshoe system, I would say, since you find clues, but you're a little klutzy maybe, so you don't always correctly interpret those clues the first time.
Wait, what movie
I
was
watched
Ace Ventura?
What's that?
What movie was that? Ace Ventura?
No, last night my wife said I don't want to watch anything that's too intense. I just so we watched Confess Fletch.
I'm not familiar with
The
that.
okay, it's the Fletch movies were Chevy Chase a long time ago. They made a new one. It's a series of books where Fletch is an investigative reporter, witty, charming, kind of, you know. So there you go.
My last movie was Across the Spider-Verse,
Same.
and oh man, do I not know a good answer to this question. I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna need infinitely variable character creation.
Spider people everywhere.
Yeah, right? Because we're all playing as spider people, right? That's clearly the central purpose of this. So I don't know if y'all have a system that you think has a flexible enough character creation that allows for Peter Parked Car and Spider Ham. Patchwork World, interstitial good work. Love it. Don't know what they're about. We'll look them up.
I've got a couple people. Somebody said in masks it might work. Somebody else said the strange.
Really just need Claim the Sky in like the Cypher rule book. You'd probably handle most of it.
Wait, no, I got it. Let's just do rifts. It's so simple.
No.
That's never the right answer to any question.
It's the answer to what's the first RPG Shawn ever played.
Oh, I was a big Rifts player in the 90s. I would absolutely fess up to it. I still have a lot of nostalgia for it. But
I had lots of books for it. But...
So here's my pitch, guys. You all play a group of children who are accepting awards for your scientific inventions out in the desert, and this is a military it's a military like bomb site as well, and there's also an alien that appears at a certain point. Spoilers for Asteroid City. It's Asteroid City. I'm guessing Fiasco. I don't know what Fiasco seems like the only one that would maybe work, but because I'm not, my thing is I'm not sure like what we would be doing. I guess we'd just be maybe we'd be investigating what the aliens want, in which case a mystery system would probably work pretty well. I have to know a pretty good one, but probably Fiasco. Yeah.
Chat's still trying to decide what system to use for Into the Spider-Verse, or well, any Spider-Verse really.
It's just giving me a summer reading list of systems that I need to catch up on.
I have my summer reading list, and then I have my TTRPG summer reading list. Like, they're just two giant piles.
Which one's longer?
My regular reading list, believe it or not. But that's because I go back and forth between, like, something that's not fiction and then something fiction, so I'm in the middle of a non-fiction book right now.
Which one do game books count as?
Yes.
Understood. Well done.
Which actually, that's what most of mine are. Like, I have a, well, let's see. I have the new 2023 edition of Tome of Beasts that just came out. I've got that to take a look at, which looks pretty awesome. Ooh, adult mithril dragon. Fun. Anyway, so I gotta flip through that at some point, and I don't even know. I got a lot of stuff over there. Yeah. I got a lot of stuff over there. Probably looks like I'm staring back into the abyss that I was pulling dice out of earlier. Reaching back into my, like fireplace behind me and pulling out dice. Okay, let's see. The next question that we have, this one is actually specifically for Jason. And this is from Third Floor Wars. What would you use as an elevator pitch to get a D&D player to try trophy?
Well, that Third Floor Wars, I'm pretty sure that's Craig, who's the host of Third Floor Wars. Yeah, so for people who don't know, Trophy is one of the games that we publish. It's a dark fantasy, very, very intense horror dark fantasy game. It's actually 2 games, Trophy Dark and Trophy Gold. And the question was, how would we get like a D&D player to play it? Was that the question?
Yeah, a pitch for a D&D player. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it's fun when your character absolutely gets destroyed at the end. Like, there's pleasure in that, and Trophy will deliver. Sometimes it's fun to get incredibly invested in your character and then watch them scraping their eyes and skin off their face by the time it's over. Sometimes it's fun to create a character, learn about their backstory, get really, really deep with them, and then watch them be trampled and gored to death by a monstrous mutant deer in a forest that absolutely hates you. Sometimes the trophy is you, and that's good. That's a fun thing. So, yeah. Trophy, yeah, I guess that's my pitch. Like, sometimes it's fun to wallow in darkness and die. You know, give it a shot. I don't feel like I've sold anybody on it.
100% sold me on it. I'm down. Let's go. The forest.
You're describing most of my games. So.
We only publish like intense horror games. That's all we publish, and like we love it when characters are fucked up and dead by the end, right? Like just totally doomed and fucked up and dead. And so if that hasn't happened, we haven't done our job. And so there's a pleasure in that, right? There's a pleasure in knowing that you get to just run this character hard and run them. And run them, just fucking go for it, because it doesn't matter. They're going to be dead by the end. Like, that's what Trophy's all about.
I get that a lot as well myself. Like, sometimes I like a good like narrative flow system or something like that. Like, I like to change moods. I change genres. I don't stick to one. But then, like, it was only the other day I ran Morkborg for a couple of groups for the first time, and like the one guy like lost both his hands and broke his ankle in the first room, and he hadn't even started their first fight yet. And he's like, "This is awesome."
Yeah, we call it in Trophy HQ. We call it play to lose. It's the play to lose mindset, and that's what we love, and that's what we do. Sometimes it's very fun to play to win, but sometimes it's fun to play to lose too. So.
Okay. Let's see. We could probably squeeze in one more question before we go to break. And this is a good one. I feel like we could debate this one for a while. This one comes from David Tilstra, and David would like to know, if you had to choose one class from any system to play for the rest of your life, what would it be? Rosie, that pretty much summed up my reaction too. For anybody listening to the podcast version, she basically just was like making the oh my goodness face with her hands up on her cheeks and everything.
I've been playing mostly classless systems these days. It's hard.
I mean, I'm classless as a person, but I do play.
I mean, I guess like the classic classes, I guess wizard, like super nerd that bends reality because of the power of knowledge and study.
I'll go with bard, because I'm not very smart, but if I talk enough, I can bend reality. So
I mean, ranger's my comfort class, but I could not play that for the rest of my life. I'd probably pick cleric just because there are so many different ways to spin it, and they do have quite a wide range of abilities. I feel like I wouldn't get bored too quick with cleric. And I like playing support. I'm support in whatever game I'm in.
You've literally been checking off my answers as you went. So I'm like, no, okay, I can't say wizard. I'm going to say bard. I can't say bard. I'm going to say cleric. I can't say cleric. So go ahead, Jason. You're going to take my last one.
Whenever I play a classic fantasy game, I always play a thief or a rogue, whatever the rogue or thief thing equivalent is. And I don't know why that is. I do know why it is. I absolutely 100% know why it is. The reason why is because when I was in, I don't know, middle school or something, playing deep into second edition D&D, which is mainly what I played when I was a kid, they had this like series of source books, these brown faux leather source books, and one was like the complete guide to thieves. And that was so fucking cool. Like all the different tools and all the different like things that you could do. Like it really opened up the idea of like what a thief could be and what a thief could do. And I've been in love with the class ever since. And so yeah, I'd be a thief.
Yeah, that first edition and second edition, thief was the class where it mattered what you did as opposed to what was in the book.
Mhm.
And so people with great imaginations who wanted to describe getting behind the monster rather than just looking at the book and saying, I cast this spell. It was so attractive to them back then. I'm gonna go with Bard. I'm gonna do Shawn Squared. Just such a fun class to be helpful or hurtful or harmful. It's a great class to play. And then you throw in the schools. School of Business is my favorite school of Bard, but that's a whole different thing.
Shawn and I continue to be the same person.
That's true.
Many times. Yeah.
Gaming.
I pre-recorded this, and I'm actually there right now.
That's right. I recorded that earlier, and I'm actually here right now.
It's true. Yeah. I will vouch for that. I think
only class I actually get to play in person all the time is Game Master. Maybe through Power Fantasies or Ego, I don't know. But maybe that, like, does that count? Can I choose that?
Sure.
Yeah, I choose God as my class for the rest of my life.
It is my most comfortable seat. I prefer to be a GM over a player.
I was about to say I don't like to play. I only like to GM. Like I love like Forever DM. That's me. Like I'm here for that. I think last time I actually played was like it's been at least 3 or 4 years. I think I've only ever been a GM.
It's been 3 or 4 hours for me.
I always gravitate towards playing a rogue, but it's like, I don't know if I would want to play a rogue for the rest of my life. But I don't know what I would want to play. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm gonna move on. We're gonna head to a break pretty shortly. Actually, we have a bunch more questions to get to, so definitely please stick around. But before we do that, I just want to talk for a minute. I mentioned at the start of the stream that next weekend is going to be our 3rd annual Extra Life charity stream weekend extravaganza. So starting on Friday of, this coming Friday, July 7th, we're going to have an entire weekend of TTRPG content right here on this channel. And Friday night's going to kick it off with... let's see, who is DMing that? Saint, also known as Chris from Discount Dungeons, is DMing a 5e game. And then on Saturday morning, we have another 5e game that's going to be DM'd by Matt. Most people know him as Dungeon Glitch on Twitter. That afternoon, we have an Aether and Steamworks game, which is going to be DM'd by its creator, Ty Burris. That's a really fun system. If you're into steampunk and D20 games and things like that, definitely worth giving that one a look. We've got a 5e game coming up Saturday night that Star Shinobi is going to be DMing. Sunday morning, we have a Cypher game coming up, and that's going to be DM'd by Kyle Express, and they're going to be playing a Cypher short that was written by Underground Oracle, and Jess from Underground Oracle is going to be one of the players, so that should be a lot of fun to see what she does with that, with somebody else running the game. And then we're going to be wrapping it up that night with another episode, a bonus episode of Tales from the Tavern. And for anybody who is not familiar with what Extra Life does, Extra Life raises money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And so they provide millions of dollars in support to Children's Miracle Network hospitals. There's over 50,000 people all across the country who raise money. It started in 2008, and since then has raised over $100 million for Children's Miracle Network, which is really cool. Anybody can participate. You don't have to be a streamer. You don't have to be a content creator. People do them at game stores. They do them, you know, all kinds of stuff. And this year is a little bit extra special because it's their 15th anniversary. So it was founded, a little bit about how Extra Life was founded. It was founded in memory of a little girl from Orange, Texas. Her name was Victoria. And each year, you know, like I said, thousands of gamers and celebrities and people raise funds for over 170 Children's Miracle Network hospitals across the US and Canada. Last year, the first year we did it, we raised $1,000 in 2021. In 2022, we raised $2,000. So this year, our goal is to raise $3,000 and see if we can do that. So we've already gotten a few donations to kick us off, which is really cool. If you can't make it by next week and you want to help out, there's actually a widget in the About section below the stream that will literally let you donate right there. You don't even have to leave the stream to do it now, which is really awesome. They didn't have that before. Children's Miracle Network hospitals treat kids in neonatal intensive care units. They treat kids with cancer. They do surgery for kids. They treat kids for diabetes. They help provide pediatric medical equipment. They make sure that hospitals can provide charitable care for those who need it. Help provide specialized services for things not covered by insurance, which if you're in the US can be quite a bit. So definitely consider donating if you can. If you can't, that's okay too. Just help spread the word. We would greatly appreciate it. You'll be seeing stuff on Twitter and Mastodon and all of that over the next week. I would really appreciate any help you can in spreading the word. And yeah, so we've got that coming up, something great to look forward to. And the schedule will show up in just a minute on the screen when I switch over to our break screen, so you guys can kind of check that out again and make a mental note of any streams you want to make sure to check out. Just a nice little pitch for me because I'm really excited about next week's Tales from the Tavern. We have Kay Dampier coming on. We have David Tilstra coming back. We have that Candace girl coming on. We have Jen Geeky coming on, which the last time I had Kay and Candace and Jen on together, I don't think we stopped laughing the entire time. And then the sixth person, including myself, who will be joining us is actually B. Dave Walters is coming back again this year. So we're really excited about that. Last year, he offered to run a game for all of the people that were on the stream with him if we raised $2,000, and we hit that in like 10 minutes. So, it would be really cool if we could do that again. But if not, that's okay too. We're just trying to do the best we can and raise money to help kids. So I'm going to send it to a break so everybody can get up and stretch their legs, and we will come back and answer some more questions. The next one, we're going to come back and do a little bit of talking about Indie TTRPG month. So we will see you after the break. All right, we are back. Hope everybody had a good break. We're gonna dive right back in with the next question that we have. So our next question comes from Jason, aka Shadowmane. And his question is, as it's been proposed that July should be Indie TTRPG month, what is your favorite indie game or one you wish more people knew about? This is a great opportunity to talk about anything that you also have worked on. Just throwing that out there.
My own games.
Plug our own stuff. Come on, let's go.
Well, so okay, I think the question is actually really interesting because I there's a whole like semantic thing about like what counts as indie RPGs, right? And I think indie is more of a play style than anything, but I think there's also a good case to be made that essentially anything that's published by an individual is indie, right? Regardless of play style. I will say though that there is so much good stuff in the indie RPG space. I'm just gonna advocate generally for the indie RPG space since that's my vector of the hobby. There is so much opportunity to tell different kinds of stories that are not just traditional fantasy gaming stories that are about emotions and relationships and people and I'm gonna gosh, I could just like name 100 right now and I won't. So because I could name 100, I'm gonna name one of my own instead. and I'm gonna say we have just put out a game. It's of all of our games we've put out, this is the one that's getting the traction the fastest, like from the initial release. It's called Public Access. It's one of mine that I wrote. I'm the creator and publisher, and it is a game about a group of young people who go to, in 2004, they go to a rural town in New Mexico to investigate the literal vanishing disappearance of a public access TV station they remember from their childhood. And Public Access is a game, it's based off Brindlewood Bay mechanically, and it is all about they're there to investigate this mystery about the TV station, but they end up like investigating all these other types of mysteries that are in and around this town in New Mexico. It is very analog horror, it is very creepypasta, it is very found footage horror in a role-playing game form. We've got some really slick mechanics that kind of emulate the feeling of watching an analog horror video, and it's great fun. We've had like 3 very successful games that have led up to this one, but this one is the one that like from the jump people like super, in our space at least, are really hype about it, and so we're very excited about it. We think it's a lot of fun, and I don't think there's anything like it out there. There's no analog horror RPGs that I'm aware of, at least, out there in the world. And so if that's something that interests you, you should do that. But just a general matter though, there's so many cool stories to tell in role-playing games. Like role-playing games don't have to just do one thing. There's so many cool stories. There's so many avenues of storytelling and expression. Shawn B mentioned a really cool one, Good Society. I love Good Society. Such a great game. The Jane Austen role-playing game. That team out of New Zealand or Australia, New Zealand. Anyway, they're lovely. And yeah, so there's just a whole world of like storytelling that can be done, and indie RPGs are ready for you, like to find them and try them out. So yeah, just a big advocate for indie RPGs.
I think it's going to be probably a similar answer for a lot of us because the fact that you can branch out so much, I can name so many, like The Secrets of Cats was amazing because you're all playing cats and protecting your burdens from Lovecraftian horrors, or Ryutama where it's about the journey, not so much as like saving the world or something, and it's very different. And Mystery Flesh Pit National Park, I just did some stuff with Gonza not too long ago. We were chatting, and that's such an oddball setting, and I love it because it's so different, and yeah, it's hard to narrow it down, really.
I think indie games are bad and you should microwave cheese. No.
You've made an enemy this day.
Someone's got to know. With everyone else, there's way too many to list. Jason, while crediting me, stole Good Society out from under me again. But I don't know. One of the best things you can do as a player, as a GM, as a designer, as a writer in general, is read more. Just read more. Not only will you find ways to solve problems that you never thought of, you'll find problems that you never thought of to solve. And every single system has something to offer in that way. So yeah, I don't really have an answer. I'm bad at things. Go play.
I love that. If I can piggyback off that real quick. Speaking of good society, like one of the things that like indie RPGs do so well that is where even if you don't have a lot of interest in like playing them necessarily, they have so much to like teach us about play culture and ways of play and mechanics and design, right? And that's a great way to enjoy the indie scene, even if you never get the games to the table, right? Good Society is a great example since we've talked about Good Society. Good Society has this system that is like so stellar when it comes to this idea of consent and play. Like just the idea of consent and play is something that like I don't think the more traditional side of the hobby really talks about much, but there's really something to be said about mechanics, like mechanically enforced consent and play. So in Good Society, like at a mechanical level, at a procedural level, everyone is buying into the story and consenting to the romance and to the different like things that happen in the story, right? And so the indie RPG scene is not it's not just like different types of stories, it's also like different ways of play and play culture. And that's what we do in the Gauntlet every single day. And I just think I think even if like you don't think you're ever going to get those games to the table, there's something there for you in terms of just like broadening like your horizons in terms of like what games can be and how they can function, you know. So yeah. I'm just backing up Shawn there completely. Like
yeah, and what indie games can do is show you that there are other ways to tell stories. We sometimes get stuck in the Western idea of linear storytelling, of rising action and falling action, of anything, of consequences coming, you know, in a line that aren't necessarily there in other cultures and other stories. And so these indie games help us, they remind us of that and help us grow out in different directions and see different points of view.
The indie scene coming out of Southeast Asia and Latin America is sick. It's so good. And like, and that stuff just needs more eyes on it, you know, like there's just, it deserves a bigger audience. I don't know, like this is a definitional thing, but I consider the OSR to be indie RPGs as well, the old school movement. And one of the like creators of the OSR scene who's fairly well known within the OSR scene is ZXU from Malaysia. And ZX books, the one that just came out is called Reach of the Roach God. They are pure poetry. Like they are magic to read. And like, even if you just pick this book up to just be like, just to read it for like pleasure, like you can do that, you know, like there's a real perspective and a point of view that, like Shawn said, you don't get from the Western point of view necessarily. And so there's just so much good stuff out there. Like I'm always very shocked like by how people like limit themselves when it comes to role-playing games.
I think you said something really important too about the sort of the linear storytelling and the rise and fall and that sort of thing. You know, the other thing too with checking out all kinds of different games is that they're not all the hero always wins and, you know, all of that, you know, like I think of 10 Candles, the game 10 Candles. Like it literally tells you at the beginning of the book, tell your players they are going to die. Like you go into the game knowing that's going to happen. But at the same time, the story that you can tell in that, even knowing that's going to happen, is like, whoa. Like, there's so much that you can still do with all of that, you know? I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, like you said, the fact that indies can allow you to explore all kinds of different ways to tell stories, and they're not all the good guy always wins and, you know, and that sort of thing.
I'm going to jump off of that and say that I do have a favorite because it was my first sort of intro to deviating from Dungeons and Dragons. It's called Tea Time Adventures. It is very soft, very sweet. There is zero combat. You cannot do combat in this system. And that was kind of like throwing me for loops, because in D&D, you only ever solve problems with combat for the most part. Enemy, fight it. This one, there are still problems. There are still tricky situations, like heavy societal and personal topics that are broached within the narrative. And having your characters have skills like comfort or like talk it out, and have powers that are based on empathy rather than combat or aggressive sorts of things. And the fact that it had like amazing queer representation, disabled representation. It was just such a nice, complete package of things can be different. You don't always have to play D&D. Look how good this is. Look how much better this fits you.
And that's just as fun as combat, right?
Yes,
Like it's just as fun. Yeah.
I loved it so much. It was the first AP I ever show ran. I had such an amazing cast for it. And like the book has recipes in it. It's like, oh, if you were playing this module or this story, it will go well with this banana bread and chamomile tea. It is just so soft and lovely while still having some very heavy topics that get resolved in very loving ways, which is so nice to play through. It's so gentle, which is different than quite a few TTRPGs. But that was my first kind of foray into things can be different. Look at all these amazing other stories and ways of storytelling that you can engage with.
Yeah.
I think another thing in the indie space that I really like and I'm addicted to sometimes are micro RPGs. I've got this like, emergency kit. It's like 3 pages long, but it's like 17 RPG systems on these 3 pages, like lasers and feelings or roll for shoes, like things like that. Because you never know. I mean, it makes you think even about the more bulkier systems, that sometimes like these things, like you don't need complicated rules all the time. You don't always need the crunch. Sometimes you like that, but sometimes those like 3 rules and like roll for shoes and you're done. There you go, bud.
It's all about scope, right? Like what's great about lasers and feelings, super light touch system. You can probably fit the whole rules on an index card. And but it's a scope thing, because you just it's just a one shot. Like you just play it it's a one shot, it's fun, you have a blast. I mean, you couldn't really do lasers and feelings for a whole campaign. There's not enough there to support that. But if you're just looking for like a night of like good clean RP fun, without a lot of prep, the indie scene has you covered as well. So.
Yeah. All right, let's see. The next question that we have is another one from David Tilstra. And David would like to know, what was the first moment you realized you loved TTRPGs?
I'll go.
Go for it.
I feel like I was jumping first. So honestly, like I'll just say like my gaming backstory, because it's like so formative to like who I am, just not as a gamer, but just like as a person. I started playing role-playing games in the 4th grade when I was like 10 years old. And the very first game I played was the Marvel Superheroes box set, the advanced one, the sort of bluish red one. And I didn't know what role-playing games were. My dad used to take me to this comic book store, but I saw it there. I knew it was a game of some sort. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what Dungeons and Dragons was, so I had no frame of reference at all. But I wanted it, and so he bought it for me. And I sat and read it and reread it for like literal months, not knowing what to do. I was like, I have no clue what this is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I know it's a game of some sort. I have no idea. And then an older kid came over and taught me how to play it. He's like, no, let me show you how. This is how you do it. And I made a little character. I made a villain, and he ran me through a little scenario. And I will never forget in my life. I'll never forget. My character was robbing a jewelry store, and he describes me going up to the jewelry store, and he goes, well, what do you do? And I was like, what do you mean, what do I do? He's like, what do you do? I was like, I don't know. Like, does this chart have something to do with it? Like, are these dice? Like, is this part of it? I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? What do I do? I don't know. And he's like, just tell me what you do. And I was like, I guess I checked to see if the door's unlocked. He's like, okay. And in that moment, I was hooked. I mean, I was hooked for life in that moment, because I was hooked by the possibility. Like, I was hooked by the absolute possibility. I was like, whoa. And that was it for me. Like, I mean, that was it. Like, I was in it, and it was going to be my thing. So, and if you had asked 10-year-old me if I would be doing role-playing games as my job in my 40s, I would have absolutely said yes. I would have been like, yes, I will be. Even though I abandoned that dream for most of my adulthood, when I was 10, I definitely would have said yes. And so my 10-year-old me would be very proud of me right now, I think. So.
Those intoxicating 4 magic words. What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah.
When you have a creative person on the other end of those words? The sky's the limit. Anything can happen, and it is intoxicating. There's no doubt about it.
100%. I'm relatively new to the TTRPG space. I've only been playing since 2020, and that is kind of that moment for me. It was a group of friends that I had been playing video games with. We all happened to be going to the same convention. One said, "Hey, let's play a one-shot, a D&D one-shot." I'd never played. I'm like, "Okay, help me with character creation. Let's get set up." We all meet to play this one-shot, and it is in this beautiful ballroom at this convention. It is overlooking a river. It was a foggy morning, and the one-shot took place in Waterdeep. So having that like immersive real-life weather event happening, and then the DM playing off of like the foggy morning in Waterdeep. You walk into this tavern. There is a big elevator that goes down deep into the ground, and those words, "What do you do?" And from that moment, I'm like, yep, this is my entire personality for forever now. This is just everything. It was so much fun, from like the first goblin I killed to the first spell I cast. Just getting to be in a group and telling a story together is such an amazing, creative feeling. And it is intoxicating, and you always want more, which is why sometimes I'm in 7 games a week. But it is just so enthralling in the best creative way. It is such a unique form of storytelling, because it's not just one author, it is many, and working together in that collaboration is such a beautiful thing.
I'm gonna cry during this whole question. This is like my favorite kind of question. This is my favorite thing to talk about in role-playing games. I love hearing people's stories with this kind of thing.
Mine's kind of a weird answer, because I also say I fell in love with it before I even played my first session. So like I had I'm not gonna go into details. I had a rough childhood, I'm gonna say. I didn't have any friends as a result, because I isolated myself. And in, I think it was 1993, my aunt gave me she had the red box, the original like D&D red box. And she's like, "Hey, like, I'm not doing this. Like, here, like, look at this." And then at the time, 2nd edition was out, and my mom's like, "Okay, we're going to find you a group. We need to get you human contact, or you're going to be a weird hermit later." So yeah, so they bought me like the player's handbook, and I think the complete book of elves. I actually think I got that before the player's handbook. I missed the brown books. And
they were so good, right? They were so cool.
So much explanation in them. But yeah, it was just before I even got to play, and it was seeing, like, I had retreated in books at that point. I was reading a lot of Piers Anthony, Mercedes Lackey, like a lot of like stories like this, and the fact that there was a way that we could like structure a world about it, that I could delve into it myself before I even started playing, and the fact that like there was a new format for not just escapism, but like to have my imagination do something, was really big for me. And then once we found a group for me to join, it was actually a public space. The local mall allowed us to take, if there was empty storefronts, we could take over the empty storefront and play in those. And because we had like really big groups, like there was like 24 people across multiple games, I think, at one point. And so like my love kind of started even before session 1, even before I started just reading, like, because I think my first book was the complete book of elves, and then I got the player's handbook after. Just reading this stuff and being like, this is like Tolkien plus at that time. That's what really drew me in. And yeah.
Yay, bad childhood friends.
Trauma bonding.
Oh, nice. Everybody got high five.
Yep, same here.
No, I mean, I think what made me fall in love with TTRPGs is what it offered to me. We've talked about some of these already, like collaborative storytelling. Growing up, I knew I combat's fine. Combat's fun. I enjoy combat, but the things that drew me into TTRPGs were never combat. It was having a way to resolve things without combat, having the social interactions in a structured way, and having self-isolated a lot as a kid, and having not realized that I was autistic until when I was an adult. Finding TTRPGs, finding a group that was accepting and open and interested in telling stories together kind of scratched all those itches, right? I spent a lot of time running away into sci-fi fantasy novels, but that's alone. And I wanted to be near people. I wasn't always good at being near people, but I wanted to be near people. And then finally I found a way to tell the kinds of stories that I think are interesting. The stories that exist in these worlds where we can remove ourselves a little bit and then find answers to questions that you sometimes carry back to our lives, right? So I think that's what made me fall in love with it. I don't know if I have a moment where that happened. It's probably, I don't know, sometime in the last 8 years after I moved to Georgia. Yeah, that's me.
It's a damn good reason,
I would
though.
like to comment on that at one point, just because you mentioned the autism and getting into a way as being social. My buddy Wes, one of my players, is very autistic, like to the point where like he needs assistance in his daily life a lot of times and whatnot. And he said part of the reason he got into it is because it gave him a structure to socialization. And I'm like, that's okay, it's amazing.
Yeah, my story is about the same as everyone else's. So I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to say as a creator, the moment, and it was in probably the early 2000s, and I had written an adventure for one of the organized play campaigns from Wizards of the Coast, and we were at a convention at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, where the football stadium is, and huge convention center. And I walk into the convention center, and I see literally hundreds of tables, games going on at every single one of them. And someone said, yeah, they're all playing your adventure right now. And I look around and I see all of these people telling their own stories, but using the characters and the plots that I had created. And it was exhilarating. It was like, this is the greatest. And then it was, what if I suck? Next time I'm going to work harder, because I understand now that people are actually playing this. And sometimes it's lots of people playing this. And by golly, I don't want that experience to be bad. So I am going to bear down from this point forward and make sure all my I's are dotted and all my T's are crossed. Forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah.
I'll tell you though, it never stops being exhilarating when you hear someone is playing your game. It never stops being like that's why I get up every day, right? Like, I mean, like, yes, it's my job and that's important, obviously, but like, but every time like I see like a new Twitch stream doing Brindlewood Bay or I'm always just like, what? I can't believe it. Like, I can't believe that like someone is like dedicating their time to like engage with something that I created, right? Like it never stops being a special feeling. Like, it really, really is like so cool. And yeah, it's great. I get that, Shawn. Like, I totally get that.
Yeah, I'm going to pay somebody to run public access for me.
I'll run public access for you. I run 5 games a week. I'll run public access for you.
I don't think I can identify like a moment for me. Like, it was sort of this, I played for let's see, gosh, probably 10 years before I ever got into like streaming and content creation and that kind of thing. And during those 10 years, all I've ever played was homebrew D&D. That was it. Like, I think once I played the Dragon Age system, and that was like the only time I had ever played anything that was not D&D. And I like the fact that at that point I was like, there are games other than D&D? Like, I had no idea. And the vast majority of that was 3.5. And then we bypassed 4, and then before it was 5th edition, it was D&D Next. So we played some of that when it was still like in its playtesting phase. And it was one of those things that like I enjoyed it, but at that point I enjoyed it more for the social aspect, in part because when I first started playing, my daughter was a newborn, so it was like, it gave us a chance to have people over to the house and me to have other adult interaction, and that wasn't work, that wasn't parenting, that kind of thing. And so I liked it for that reason. And it wasn't until like much later I had gotten divorced. I was living on my own with my daughter, and answered a casting call. And I was like, I knew nothing about streaming. I knew nothing about any of this stuff. And it was for a Pathfinder game. And I was like, okay, all I know about Pathfinder is that it's basically D&D 3.5. So sure, why not? And ended up getting into the game. We ended up streaming the game and everything. And it was kind of at that point that I was like, oh, this stuff's really cool, because my only experience had been with like the same group of people for like 10 years. So my experience was never really varied. And it was very like, this is just how you play, And so suddenly having it like playing with a new group of people that I didn't know, like one person was in my state, but like somebody else was in New York, somebody was in Nova Scotia, somebody was, so it's not like these were people that I interacted with in my day-to-day life normally. It was really eye-opening at that point, and I learned a lot from those people just about like how to play, not like mechanically, but like how to think outside the box with my character, and how to like I was something that I've talked about in other instances, but like how to like flavor my character in a way that, instead of being like, I swing my sword again, it's like, no, add RP to it and make it more interesting and give your character some personality. It was kind of like, that was that eye-opening moment for me when I was like, oh, I get it now. And then sort of from there branching out into checking out other systems and discovering the whole indie TTRPG scene, and like, oh, I'd gone to PAX East, but I'd always sort of, I don't want to say avoided, but didn't heavily involve myself in the tabletop end of the show floor. For anybody who's been to that one, you kind of know what the setup is like, but it wasn't until I really got into it that I was like, oh my God, there's like a whole other world here, or lots of them, really, lots of other worlds here. And sort of through doing that, it gave me a lot of freedom to like get into doing this stream and meeting other people and hearing about their experiences and how TTRPG changed their lives, and, what sort of experiences have they had, and got into blogging about it and have done some very, very minor work on various publications and things like that. So it wasn't until that point that I really was like, oh, there's a lot of ways that I can sort of flex some creative muscles that I hadn't been able to up until that point. And that's when it really started to be like, oh, this is something that I am definitely into. I like playing. GMing, I'm not super comfortable with, and I don't do it a whole lot, but it's really a lot of the other creative pieces that go with it that like I like learning about other people's experiences and how to make the games better for them in that way. There's a lot I could talk about that forever. So
I love hearing everyone's origin story.
I know.
That's good for my heart. I love it.
All right. So let's see. Next question is, do you start with a character arc in mind or develop one in game as it happens? I'm going to sit on this one because I've talked about this a lot. So people who've seen me regularly know my take on this.
I
Yes.
don't play, so
That's my issue. I'm the GM 99% of the
Well, I mean, GMs still have to create characters, right? You have your
Lots
big
of them.
character.
That's true.
You have to create.
but a lot of times it's for the story, so the character arc pretty much comes first. I would say most of the time, because it's for the story.
Yeah, that's fair. As a player, I kind of do both. Depends on the game. but
Mhm.
it's a game which is going to have like a longer arc. I'll talk to the DM about the world and how my character arc can fit into it, what I see as like possibly the areas of growth that my character that would be interesting to explore. And then the game starts, and then you're off to the races, right? Like then you have no idea what's going to happen, and in the moment you're going to realize that your character cares deeply about the dwarven revolution that's happening to the north, because of their ties to their boarding school friend who just right, like something's going to happen. So I don't know. I do both. For my NPCs, again, like big motivations, kind of where they are, who they're associated with, and then the smaller personality stuff, the things they might learn along the way, the medium small sand rocks, they all get filled in based on what happens with my players.
Yeah, session zeros are great, in many games, or if the game itself has its own session zero as part of play, to hash all those things out with the other players, with the game master, with yourself, and make it so that everyone sort of knows where you're going, but also everyone knows that you're going to be flexible and maybe change. One of the things I love to ask my players at the start of a campaign is, what's the main goal of your character? Okay, what's the thing that would send that character off that trail? And that gives me two things to work with: either help them follow that goal, or move them toward that goal, then throw them off that trail. So think of storytelling and conflict and growth, and play around with that.
I don't have an answer because I don't play, but I guess my answer is it depends on the game, right? I think that's basically the answer for me. But I do think there's like a sort of like corollary conversation though, which is worth having, which is sometimes I think it's really easy to like get wrapped up in what your own character's story is and what they're doing, and that's great because that's the fun of role-playing games. Is one of the parts of what makes it fun. But there's something to be said about as well, like paying really close attention to what other players are saying about their characters, right? Like there's a certain like givingness to that style of play where you are not just focused on your own character, but you're also like paying really close attention to what the other people are saying about their characters. Like in my games, this is all proceduralized. Like you kind of have to because of the way the game works. But you can absolutely do it in any game, right? Like don't just like pay attention to what the GM is saying, and think like pay attention to what the other players are saying, and see if there's a way that you can like work your story into their character's story in some way. Because it shows that you're invested, it shows that you are paying attention, and that you care, So that would be my answer, which is like, yes, think about your own character, but also think about the other characters as well.
I think I play very similarly. As someone that chronically plays a support role in just about every game, no matter what, I will write pages of backstory, but say this is what the character has done so far. What happens next is what happens next. I don't really necessarily go in with a goal in mind, like this is what I want her or him or them to have done by the end of the game. This is where they're coming from. This is their motives. This is their flaws. This is what they're bringing to the table. How does that mesh with everyone else? And I found that leaves it very flexible for the DM. It leaves it very open for as far as what happens to this character. One of my favorites that I'm working with right now is I have an NPC from one of the games I run. I have taken her and made her a character in someone else's game. So everything that happened to her in my home game laid the groundwork for what she's now experiencing in this game. And we threw her into Curse's Strahd, and that was a lot. Yeah. But it does, for me, it's very interesting to see how can I be helpful? How can I promote other people's stories until it is kind of my turn? Or do I even want to have any sort of focus on my character rather than them just kind of be there and support and offer kind of foils for other characters? That's the way I prefer to play. I never go in with like a distinct, this is what they're going to do by the end. But I find that to be a very neat and open-ended way to play, because then you really do get to write a whole new story without having any prejudices going into it.
Sort of similarly, I like to kind of figure out my characters as they go, and yeah, like I kind of come in and say like, okay, this is their history, this is where they're coming from, but I really like to use the game and what has happened in the game to decide where their next steps are going to be. I have one character that I always use as an example for this. She was, when I started her, she was a rogue, a level 3 rogue. We started at level 3. And over circumstances that had happened, there was a scenario where her significant other was on a ship that got blown up. And so she, instead of being like, well, I started as a rogue and my goal is to go to rogue level 20, I said, okay, what would she as a character do? Like, how would she handle that? She took a level in fighter at her next level because she was like, no, I want to get payback. I want to, I want retribution for what happened. And so, she spent some time training with the barbarian in the group and learned some things there. And then as the story progressed, she had spent a lot of time with a character who was a ranger. And so her next level was a ranger because she had just learned things from spending time with them. So, yeah, I mean, I had no intention of like multi-classing 3 times when I started the character. But it made, like, to me, it made sense because of like, this is who she's spending time with. Of course, like anybody, the more you spend time with somebody, the more you pick up like, oh, this is how you do this. This is how they do that. They taught you how to do this other thing along the way. And so I was like, it kind of makes sense for my character to change and develop in that way. So that's kind of the mindset that I take to all of my characters now. But, yeah. All right, let's see. Oh, this question we talked about before the stream. I said that something like this might come up. This is a very important question. Can you drink a water elemental?
I think it's more, do you want to? You don't know where that's been.
I'm
flavor is
envisioning
it?
a whiskey elemental right now.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all.
I think you can drink a water elemental if a water elemental allows you to drink it. Because like in the middle of that process, water elementals can be like, nah, and then just explode your system.
Leave.
Well, that's the thing. I think you can drink a water elemental even if it doesn't want you to drink it. It's just how long it stays in you.
And
Yeah.
does it become a urine elemental when you're done? That's the question.
See, it's funny that you mentioned that because that's the exact same conversation that happened the last time I got asked this question.
Mm-hmm.
We all share the brain cell.
It's true.
Mhm.
I know.
Nice.
So yeah, so there you go. I mean, we don't really know if it becomes a urine elemental or not, but
I'll plug someone who's an expert on these kinds of things. The Gluttonous Geek does panels on how to cook and eat your monstrous kills. So go bother her on Twitter, or whatever's still standing when you see this, and ask her if you can drink a water elemental and how it might change the biology of said elemental.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like is it going to be an excremental afterwards? Or what?
Mhm.
That's so good.
excremental.
I mean, some of the creatures in the Monster Man, they look really delicious. A lot of them.
Right?
You know?
Like,
Yeah.
like the Ankeg looks kind of good. Or that crab armed thing, that's
The
got
That's
Chul.
just the seafood boil.
the
right
Chul,
now.
yeah, the Chul, like a
Yeah,
Chul. Chul
yeah.
looks delicious. I would eat
Mhm.
Chul. Yeah.
Little drawn butter.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Mhm.
I gotta imagine that rust monsters taste interesting.
Mhm.
If it, like a solid metallic taste, you really work out with it. All right, I'm
Like
gonna
a blood pudding.
stop. Yes,
If you have any
But
metal
one's called
fillings,
pudding.
though, you
Yeah,
have to
there
be
you go.
careful.
Ooh.
Exactly. Yeah.
rust monster blood chowder, right? Because it looks
Oh,
Chowder.
lobster-esque.
yeah.
So
Ooh.
gelatinous cubes are basically 70s Jello salads.
Oh,
Uh,
Gelatinous
totally.
cubes are McDonald's Sprite.
That was chat, by the way. That wasn't me. Sorry, I'm a Tretz chat.
Oh, that's funny. All right, let's see. Next question is, hold on. I lost it. Okay. This one is another one directly for Jason. And were there any major challenges adapting Brindlewood Bay mechanics to play public access, or did everything mesh seamlessly? And how did you overcome those hurdles, if any?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, so of course there was two games that public access is truly based off of, which is my other game, The Between, and Brindlewood Bay. The Between is about Victorian era monster hunters, and there was and there wasn't. In some sense, public access existed long before Brindlewood Bay. I had the idea for public access back in 2014, and I actually made like a simple rudimentary version of it back then. This is before Brindlewood Bay was even a thought in my head, years before. But I wasn't really happy with that version of it, and so I kind of let it sit in the back burner until like it sort of mechanically revealed itself to me. And so what happened was I figured out how, like, what needed to happen with public access. That's kind of how I create. I think on things for a long, long time until the one piece, the keystone, falls into place. And for public access, it was basically this idea of like how to do the Odyssey tapes, the procedure whereby your characters watch these tapes they find, and they're very scary and weird. And once I figured out that part of it, the rest of the game fell into place. Like I knew exactly what the game had to look like once I kind of solved that one little bit. So no, like once I kind of knew where it needed to go, it was fairly simple, but it just took a long time to figure out where it needed to go. So yeah, I suspect that's probably how a lot of people create. I know Vincent Baker and I are very similar in this way. We both think about things for months and months and months, and then we write it all at once. Like I wrote Brindlewood Bay in 2 days. I wrote public access in like 4 days. Like it just lives in my head until it's done, and then it gets written down. And that's just how my process is, I guess. Yeah.
I wish I could think like that, but I just can't. I am envious of people who can.
It's not necessarily a blessing, though.
Well,
I'll be taking a walk with my wife, and she'll be talking to me, and then she'll stop talking, and she'll look at me, and I'm supposed to say something now, and then she'll say, "You're writing, aren't you?" And I'm like,
that's exactly it. Yeah,
you know it. I'm
always writing, even though I'm not like at the computer. You know, like the actual like typing is 5% of the process for me. The rest of it's just like reading books and listening to podcasts and ruminating and thinking and incorporating ideas into my melange, and then eventually I figure out the one thing that I need to actually sit down and write, like the thing that has to fall into place. And once that falls into place, it all just flows. And that's my creative process, I guess. But yeah.
I'm the sounding board. So my boyfriend, he's the one who like he has all the ideas, and then he like thinks them through out loud, and I'm like, yeah, but what about blah blah blah, or you know, whatever. And so I'm the sounding board, and we kind of make that work. It's okay.
Yeah, if I'm walking around with somebody and not paying, like I'm doing financial analysis, I'm not writing. It's running through. I'm building spreadsheets in my mind. The only time that I get like solid creative juices like that is when I'm driving, which is really inconvenient because you can't take notes when you're driving. So if you ever end up as a passenger in my car, I may throw you my phone and ask you to take notes for me and then just spew things at you. Sorry about that.
I'll remember that if I'm ever in a car with you.
Yeah. There's a notepad and pen in the glove box. Let's go.
Nice. All right, let's see. I think we could probably squeeze in one more question. I'm just trying to find the next one.
Voice memos are a good idea. Dang it.
I've started incorporating voice memos into my process, Sean. It actually is really helpful because I am the same way. I find myself in places all the time where I can't take the note,
Yeah.
and I've started using voice memos probably in the last like month, and yeah, it's surprisingly helpful. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a genius idea, and I'm mad at myself that I haven't thought of it before. Mr. T-Roll Hands is what I'm going to assume your name is.
There you go. Okay. So let's see. The last question that we're gonna finish up on. Any notable or fun moments where a player or a GM made a decision that really threw you?
I have one. Oh man, I have like a billion stories. I've been playing forever. So I'll try to cherry pick one or two here. So I made like an off-color joke during a campaign at one point. I don't remember what led up to it, but it was about the fact that there was this dude giving candy to kids from his white panel wagon in a D&D game. And they're like, okay, so this is a thing now. And I was like, oh, I wasn't planning on that. That was a joke. And they're like, no, this is the session now. And they like followed him home and stuff like that. Like I had to pull this entire sub thing off of who this guy was and what was going on. And it completely threw me off. Yeah. So, but I try to do that to my players all the time as well. They have certain expectations, especially like, back when I still played Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. I remember them going up to a door. It was like a nice, like decorated door with these like hockey puck sized like holes in them. And there was these like stone tablets, some of them already in the door, some of them laying on the ground that had like the different elements and the clouds on them and different things like this. And this big heavy stone door. And after about like, I'd say like 40 minutes of them being like, we can't like figure out like we can't figure out what order we're supposed to put them in. And finally the one guy's like, can I just open the door? And I'm like, yeah, it's not locked.
That's the best.
That's so good. I had a player throw me for a loop when they proposed to the bouncer to get into the bar. They had found a like ring of warmth that had like a nice engraving in it that was like semi-romantic, unrelated to getting through the secret door and the bouncer. But my player decided that the two obviously had to be connected and read the inscription to the bouncer, and the bouncer went, "Are you proposing to me?" And our barbarian went, "Yeah." The next 3 sessions are about their like wedding planning. The whole group's on a quest to save the planet from the thing with the bad. And they're like, "No, we're getting married to this bouncer at this bar in a dungeon." It was excellent. It was well done. I was very happy, and I still sometimes just kind of stare off into the middle distance and think about how that connection happened in our brain. Hi, Tiffany.
The wonderful thing about doing live broadcasted games is that you really got to be quick when a player throws you for a loop.
Yes.
I had run a little campaign. It was for Extra Life. It was the equivalent of a beach episode. It was a carnival. There were games. It was supposed to be light, like let's get to know each other. It was the second episode, very RP heavy. Let's just make it pleasant. And one of the players was hitting on a bar wench. In the carnival, there was like a whole little section for beers, wines, whatever. And he's like trying to like figure out, how do I impress this woman? And the goblin of the group, the literal goblin, was like, "Ooh, I got you covered. Let me be your wingman," and summoned a demon. But it wasn't just one demon, because you had to roll a die to see how many demons you summon. He rolled a 6 on a 6-sided die. So now there are suddenly 6 demons at this carnival, wreaking havoc. There are civilians everywhere. No one has their armor. No one has their weapons, because this was the beach episode. They ended up being okay. It ended up being fine, but man, was that just like a panic moment of, what did you do in the name of being a wingman? Why Chaos Goblin? But okay, sure. We're going to roll with this, see what happens. Hopefully it's not a TPK, because y'all are squishy as heck. But that was a lot of fun. It ended up being great. The whole chat was cheering them on. It was a hoot and a half eventually, but those first like 5 seconds were like, oh, what did you do?
Yeah, those magic words, what do you do? The corollary, that's the drink. The consequences of asking that is the hangover, which is anything could happen and always does. I had a group of characters who rescued some children, and they were returned, and they were given pancakes as a thank you from the matron. And so they figured that bringing back children will get them pancakes. So they spent the rest of the session kidnapping children and bringing them to the woman to get more pancakes.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, this is the what do you do conundrum. So I ran the same adventure 7 times over the course of a convention, and each time went 7 completely different ways. And it's a joyful thing. It's the magic. It's the intoxication writ large.
100%. In my game The Between, which is my game about Victorian era monster hunters, it's inspired by Penny Dreadful, if you've ever seen that show. In the game, you're actually, per the rules of the game, you're forbidden from talking about your character's backstory. You cannot do it in character or out of character until you're prompted to do so by the game's rules. And every character sheet has this list of like questions and prompts that help explore your character's backstory. And in one of the early playtests of the game, the player used the prompts and the gradual revelation of his character's backstory to reveal that his character was a legendary serial killer in the setting. And it was amazing. And I was delighted. So it threw us all for a loop, but we were delighted. It was a delighted loop. So yeah.
I do have one more I want to bring up just because I forgot about this until recently. I don't know why I forgot. It wasn't that long ago. But in the last campaign I just finished up not long ago, Windermere Fantasy Online. It's the whole like isekai guy like got stuck in a virtual like online game thing or whatever. So I figured like they're gonna play fairly characters that want to have like action and intense and stuff like that. But no, the one guy, and this is a live stream game, so Rosie, I understand like not being able to. You have to adapt on the live stream. The one guy said, no, I'm playing a 65-year-old man that's only here because I wanted to play with my son. I know nothing about video games. I don't like violence, but I do run a YouTube canoe channel all about canoes and how canoes are built. And so in like the very first session, and this showed me what the character is going to be like. He never rolled a single attack check the entire campaign. But in the first session, they get to like the boss encounter in the dungeon that was like digitally coded to be the intro dungeon for newbies and stuff. And he basically stun locked it by talking about canoe crafting and like different like, and he like researched all of these like esoteric canoe facts like out of game that he could state in game and whatnot. And he basically defeated the boss encounter. Not a single attack was rolled just by going through these canoe facts. And I'm like, what is even happening?
That's amazing. I love that. Anybody else have one they want to share? All right. Well, I guess that is probably a good place for us to wrap up anyway, because we are just about at time. And yeah, very Canadian. But we are just about at time. So what I would like to do again is just go around, have everybody remind us of who you are, where we can find you on social media, anything, if you have anything that you want to plug again before we head off for the night, we'll do that. So let's see, we're gonna start with Rosie.
It's me. I'm Rosie, Sweet Rosie B, just about everywhere on the internet. The Sweet Rosie B on Tumblr. I am a storyteller, a showrunner, a crafter, all sorts of good things. Sundays, I will be over on tav.yt doing Girls by Moonlight, which is a yet unreleased indie game. Very fun, very Sailor Moon Steven universe. We just premiered it today. It has been incredible so far. We hit the ground running. There was already a big bad. Very excited to play that. Later this week, you can find me. It's a pre-recorded show, but on Nat One Fun, I was the storyteller for a Lord of the Rings game set in Rivendell. Original story, amazing cast. Very proud of what we put together. Other than that, July was meant to be my rest month, but I will be working very hard on a Space Pirates AP that will be coming out in August. The cast announcement will be this week. Other than that, I make dice bags. Commissions are open. I do stickers. I do all sorts of fun stuff. That's on my Ko-fi. Again, just if you search Sweet Rosie B, you'll probably find me on the internet.
Nice. Well, thanks for taking some time out of your supposed to be restful July and coming to hang out. It's
Rest is a myth.
always cool to get a chance to chat with you. So thank you for coming back. Let's see, Shawn Merwin, we'll go to you next.
I'm Shawn Merwin. You can find me Twitter, Mastodon, other places as me. And if you get a chance, you can check out Ghostfire Gaming, and our latest Kickstarter is going on right now. It's called the Ethereal Expanse Setting Guide. It's pirates and spies on the ethereal plane, and it's going to be going on for a couple weeks now. So we appreciate the support, and it's nice talking about games as always.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was really great to get a chance to meet you, and thanks so much for spending your Sunday evening with us.
Absolutely.
Shawn Banerjee, we'll go to you next.
Hello, humans. So hi, I'm Shawn Banerjee. I'm at Shawn Banerjee pretty much everywhere. I've talked about Cordova a little bit, but please go check it out. We're super proud to be able to bring it to the world, and we're still working on that process, but we have a Discord and all that other good stuff if you want to get into the background or playtesting. I shall also plug that I will be on Amateurish Productions all throughout July on Tuesdays, playing a character who is yet to be revealed in a game that is yet to be revealed. But it should be a lot of fun. It'll be pretty off the cuff, and I'll do a funny accent. Don't know which one yet. But other than that, I'll be at Gen Con. So if you're going to be at Gen Con, please don't stalk me. Thanks.
Fair enough. We'll have fun at Gen Con. Thanks for coming to hang out. And Ketup, let's go over to you.
Yeah. So my name's Arcus, but I go by Ketup online all the times. Big science joke. You don't need to worry about it. So you can find me. Just search for Ketup, QEDHUP, on pretty much any social media, and I probably exist on there, even if I don't pay attention to it. Mostly, you can find me on YouTube. I do videos there. I do live stream actual plays. I have a regular one on Sunday, which is right now Whispers in the Weird, where they are starting out as a bunch of very oddball people in a roadhouse in Nevada, as some weird stuff's going on. We'll see where that goes. And of course, I've got like my regular videos. I do have the test for Dungeon Slug, family-friendly roguelike RPG that is going to be released hopefully this year. We'll see. As I mentioned, I'm doing work for the adventure that was written by Mr. Tarask and JVC Perry to convert it to the Cypher system. So if you were one of the successful backers for that one, you'll be reading my stuff, and it's going to be terrible. So I'm sorry. Aside from that, yeah, I've got a bunch of other projects on the back burner, but due to one reason or another, I can't talk about a lot of them. So I don't think I have too much else to plug right now.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and hanging out tonight also. So I appreciate your time, and always a pleasure to get to hang out with you.
You were on mine, so I got to be on yours.
It's true. Yeah. The deal is done, so. And Jason.
First of all, Whispers in the Weird sounds amazing. I would play that. I'm Jason Cordova. I am the founder of The Gauntlet, and as a general matter, the best place to find out what I'm doing and what we're up to is to go to our website, gauntlet-rpg.com, or follow us on Twitter at gauntletrpg. But in terms of like me personally, I co-host two podcasts, Fear of a Black Dragon, which is about adventure modules, and also The Darkened Threshold, which is about the intersection of horror and mystery genres and role-playing games, with a particular emphasis on games that are quote-unquote carved from Brindlewood. And then Brindlewood Bay, speaking of, is still available to pre-order. So if you didn't get the Kickstarter, you can go to the Kickstarter page and click the pre-order link there. If you want to do that, that'll be open for a little bit longer. And then Public Access just came out, which is awesome. The Between, it's only digital, but on drive-through, but it's great. You should go check it out. The Between, which is our next Kickstarter project, probably later this year. Look out for that. It's a really fun, sexy, scary game. If that sounds fun to you, go check it out. We have lots of games coming out, and the one that I want to talk about specifically is we are getting ready to come out with a role-playing game based off of the Silt Versus audio drama. The Silt Versus is a audio drama horror show. It's really, really great, and we're making the official role-playing game of it. And I definitely recommend you check that out when it comes out, and go listen to the Silt Versus. It's SILT Versus. Really fantastic folk horror setting. But generally speaking, at Gauntlet RPG.
Awesome. Well, thank you also for coming on and hanging out tonight. Again, always a pleasure to get to meet new people and talk TTRPG. It's always a good time. And thank you all in chat for coming and hanging out with us tonight. And if we did not get to your question, I am very sorry. We had way more questions than I was expecting tonight, which is always a good problem to have. We will be here again next Sunday night with our bonus episode for the Extra Life fundraiser. So if you're free and you're looking for something to do on your Sunday night, please swing by and say hi and drop some more questions in chat for next week's panel. If you are not able to, that's okay. We still love you anyway. We are going to, let's see, we're going to drop a raid on Total Party Chill. They are playing some Blades in the Dark tonight. So figured it would be a good time to pop over there and say hi to them. So drop them a follow if you're not following them already. They are good people over there. They put out some very great content. So thanks again for joining us, and have a great night, everybody. Bye.
I should go.